in the outer room. I lived in the inner room, and I had our big shared walk-in closet. And I don't lock my door. She would just come in and out, right? So I basically I was like so worried that she would hear me recording something and think she is gay. So instead, I put a tape recorder in my room and I started loudly playing The Wind by Cat Stevens. So that's like playing, I listen to the wind of my soul. So it's like playing super loud. I take the other tape recorder with the extension cord into the walk in closet where I proceed to record on tape what I would say to my parents to like turn in. So I record this thing, and then I'm trying to explain to the professor what this is. I'm writing on and on and on. I'm saying, like, it's fascinating how, like, I don't even know the word for gay in Mandarin. And if you don't have the word, how can you even how can you even think that you are something? I'm just like literally intellectualizing the entire experience. And I get to the end and I'm like, well, I suppose I'm writing so much about this because I am gay. So there, I said it. And that's literally the moment that I came out to myself. And I always, like, I even remembered thinking to myself, this is ludicrous. Like, I am coming out of the closet while sitting in my closet. Like, if I actually put this in a movie, no one, like everyone would be like, that is way too on the nose, right? Like I could have, but that's literally what happened. But like, yeah, so that was me coming out to myself. And then a number of weeks later, I ended up telling my mom, and it went terribly, actually. But yeah.
Sounds like something Ellie Chu would also do. Maybe it's a cut scene from the half of it. But Leah, I mean, just to add to that, meeting Alice, reading the script, getting to know Ellie, being Ellie, playing Ellie, how much of Ellie is in you, or talk to us about the experience or how fun you had, getting to know Ellie.
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm so touched to hear that you related to certain things with Ellie. Like so touched to hear that. That is so special. But also, it was because of Alice's honesty and her very, very clear writing and depiction of Squamish and the things that she experienced as herself, kind of like fused into Ellie, that really helped me embody that character. She worked with me so closely on the different things that Ellie went through. And it's interesting because I, as Leah, am kind of a bit more out there, energetic, and direct. So pretty much kind of the opposite of Ellie at times. And Alice and I really had to go in and strip that part of me away and find a more observant, patient, internal, and quieter side of myself, which is Ellie. So actually, during this process, I found a very, very beautiful side of myself that I wasn't really that confident in before and wasn't really able to see until Alice and I kind of worked through this and made these qualities uh, make me understand these qualities more for myself. But it was so fun, like being Ellie Chu, and also just getting to know more about the first generation immigrant experience. I did not grow up in that household. I grew up as an adoptee from Shanghai, China, with Caucasian parents. So even just working with Alice on this and getting to know more about her experience and Ellie Chu's experience aside from mine, it has been such a beautiful, rich journey. And I'm so grateful that Alice gave me this opportunity and saw that.
I'm so grateful, honestly.
Thank you. I love you.
No, I'm so lucky.
Well, Alice, why don't you take us back to the beginning of the idea for this film and what threads came together, and different filmmakers will kind of talk differently about whether they came up with the idea of the story first or they had a theme they wanted to go after. Start at the very beginning with this film for you. How did it work?
Wow, well, there are a lot of ways, as you point out, to answer that, and I don't want to take up all the time. So I think maybe the thing to talk about is I do write from for the things that I'm going to direct myself. I write from a very personal place, and to be honest, at the point I'm writing it, I actually don't think that film is probably going to get made, and that frees me up to sort of write, to write in the most honest way. And I think for one of the things, like my first film, Saving Face, it was really about my relationship with my mom, right? I really wrote that for my mom. But when I look at it, I realize I was basically asking the question, is it possible to have both find romantic love and have your family together at the same time. Like, really, that's what that movie's about. Because honestly, I didn't know how to answer that question then, because it really didn't seem for someone like me that that was something that we ever saw. And so, similarly, with the half of it kind of started as a question about, um, it's funny. I think I grew up, as I think many of us did, like weaned on romantic comedies and like watching, not romantic comedies even, but like classic films, Chinese soap operas, reading a lot of Victorian novels. And I sort of became, I sort of imbued in this idea of when you find your perfect other romantic partner, that your life is complete, right? But as I was getting older, something I started to notice is that when I think back on like the heartbreaks that I've had in my life, certainly ones, I've had some really significant romantic relationships that mattered a tremendous amount, but it wasn't like only those heartbreaks were the most important heartbreaks in my life. And if I'm really honest, probably the two biggest, well, probably the biggest heartbreak I had was with my mom, who now we're incredibly close. But when I came out to her, how terribly that went. And that really is what Saving Face is about. But another, like there have been other heartbreaks I've had really with friends. It's like I've had a couple friends where, for whatever reasons, we were not able to continue the intimacy in our friendship, right? And I think it's something that happens to a lot of people. It's not even like we hate each other. It's more literally because sometimes, honestly, it's because everyone feels like you got to prioritize your romantic partner. And then it becomes hard to figure out how you keep that kind of intense intimacy you had as friends. And so when I came out, as I mentioned, in my senior year of college, uh, my the person who ended up becoming my best friend was this like straight white guy who's like the last, maybe not the last person, but is not somebody who I met. I would be like, oh, we'll definitely be close friends. I was like, oh, here's somebody. But we would like have the most intense conversations about life. And it was utterly platonic. And he was probably the most influential in helping me accept myself as gay. Like I was coming out, I was freaked out. My family wasn't speaking to me. I didn't know how to tell my previous friends because it's very hard. You've had these friends for a number of years to be like, by the way, now I'm gay. Like you don't like, even though I know that's not what's happened, and also I had all this internalized homophobia of like, what if they're like, did she have a crush on me? Like there was all this stuff where it was, but meanwhile, here's this guy who just totally accepted me as I was. Like it was no different to him that I was gay. And we talked a lot about love. And both of us are trying to figure out how to get love actually, and romantic love. And without going into too much detail, over the like that was a friendship that it was hard to maintain ultimately. um I think when he did like go off and have a girlfriend, and I think the girlfriend was a little bit like, who's this person? And I think as a society it's a little bit, sometimes they don't have the vocabulary or the ability to articulate all the different kinds of love there are. So it was from this place that I was really like always had this question of like, it's like, what happens when you meet, like, I think we meet more than one soulmate in our life, but what if you meet one and you have no desire to have sex with them, right? How do you give a level of importance to that relationship? So it's coming from that. And then as I was writing, at some point I thought, oh, well, I think I should set this in high school. Because when I initially tried to set it as 20 somethings, the story for me just became unwieldy, probably because I was too close to it. But when you set something in high school, like, and you basically have, for something like this, a coming of age romantic comedy, you basically only have like 100 minutes, and for me to get to an ending that I was satisfied with, that I felt like would be both earned and would make the audience feel a sense of completion on emotionally. um, High school's a great place to do that. Mainly because every feeling you have in high school feels so huge. So you can really, it really is like you fall in love with someone and you think if you don't get that person, you think you will die alone. Like it's that kind of like hugeness, right? So that's a great place to cover a lot of emotional territory very quickly. Um, and because truly, I do think we all regress to being teens when it comes to love. So that's kind of how it came about.
Let's talk about the timing of the premiere, the half of it, and speaking of high school and young people. I mean, it's such a sad moment for many of us, but specifically high school experiences because their experiences are cut short, right? Like people can't even, the class of 2020. I won't bring up the sad fact that they won't be able to graduate with their peers. So for Leah, I'm curious to hear, what responses maybe you've gotten from the youth community, and also, when we talk about relationships and fluidity, and I think it's easier now today for young people to articulate these types of relationships, whereas when I was 17, and I definitely had crushes on my friends, like female friends, but were too afraid to ever say anything, and had hot guy friends, because then I could secretly kind of vicariously live through them in some weird way because I hadn't come out yet. So we'd love to hear, the responses maybe that you've gotten from youth people who've said, thank you, Leah, you're telling my story there on the screen, and also if you hear anything from young folks right now who are, under this pandemic and can't have the high school experiences that we want them to have.
Yeah. Well, I have been probably shedding a couple tears every day at some of the responses that I have seen from like for this film. I feel like I'm learning more and more about Ellie Chu every single day just by hearing everyone else's stories. And that's huge. Even though I played the character, the people out there that are experiencing these things and relating to these things are completely what makes Ellie Chu. Also, Alice Wu made Ellie Chu, but it's been really, really beautiful and such a privilege to be able to play a character that people feel so closely to, especially during a time like this. You know, I just really hope that everyone realizes how important their own individual story is, no matter what is happening externally. I know these are really tough times, but I hope that everyone out there is really being gentle to themselves as well. And um, I'm just kind of trying to place my hope in the future for things. But I think right now, something that is amazing is seeing this community of people. I think we're really lucky to have technology and social media right now because it is giving people who need their stories to be told a platform to kind of voice their opinions and what they've been going through right now. So I'm really grateful that we in the cast as well, Alexis and Daniel, have been able to have access to these things and get to read those things. I know Alexis and I have been texting each other back and forth all of the fan art and seeing people's different photos that they've been submitting of themselves looking like Chu or what looking like Ellie Chu or what their favorite thing about Aster and Daniel is. It's been I feel like it's all brought everyone kind of closer in a way, which I can only hope for something like this.
So too. Yeah,
Well,
John.
stay along that line. And Alice, what's it like to write for a high schooler? To get into that mindset. I mean, do you surrounded by that world? Did you run it past anyone and say, hey, does this sound right, or do you just have a good ear for that?
It's so funny. I wish I could tell you, like, yes, this is how I did it. But to be totally honest, again, well, okay, I do wonder. So I do long form improv and teach improv, and I think I wonder if that has some part to do with it. But I fundamentally do believe that we're all far more similar than we're different. And so I guess what I'm saying is I wrote these as people who happen to be in high school. And the thing is, I don't know, teenagers are just people. They're literally just people who are in high school. And I just wrote people that felt like I was trying more to get to the essence of what their emotions were. I definitely do have friends who are teens, or I definitely do have like it's not like I've never encountered a teen. What are they? Like I definitely encounter them, but I wouldn't say they're in my world as in I don't have a teenager. I'm not like regularly, hanging out at high schools. I mean, that would be creepy, honestly. But like, let's say, like, but I think I just wrote, and what's so funny to me is that it's like so many people are like, "How did you get it right?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I really don't." Like, that's just how the characters felt. And again, I wonder. Well, I actually do think my improv students who are mainly in their 20s, but I do feel like they dragged me over the years into like Venmo. I was like, "What is Venmo?" And because of them, I know all those things, and I'm sure that all played into. Um, yeah, that might have played into it as well.
Okay, Leah. So Alice is not going to hear this what you say. How was she as a director? What was it like having
Oh,
work for her?
Alice has
tell the
heard this
truth.
with her earbuds in and without her earbuds. It has been, you know, it's such a fully loaded question and answer, but I was telling Alice the other day that this is something I've dreamt of since I was a kid, really. And she is the first of one of the first things in my life, the first time that I have ever been uh, able to really embody a character and be the lead of a film, and a film that was written by her and directed by her. It was such an incredibly intimate experience. And I feel like Alice kind of opened me up in ways that I never ever would have expected. And, there were really easy times, but there were also very challenging times. But Alice was so patient and always took the time to help me get back to center and help me stay present through this. Actually, Alice, as a director, you didn't need to do that. You didn't have to tell me to stay present all the time. But because you did, this was such a memorable experience for me that I feel like I could live through every second very, very vividly because of how present we were. And it was just, I kind of walked away from this movie with some of the closest friends I'll ever have. Like Alexis is one of my best friends. Daniel and I are like thick as thieves, and that's all because of the work of Alice. And I guess you choosing these people and sheer luck and geniusness. But it's been a wild, beautiful experience.
I was gonna say the chemistry of the cast is also very comforting to watch, and and obviously I go back to it's like I could see myself, I could feel myself, and that's you love that if you're sitting on your couch and you're watching this, and you're putting yourself into that movie. But Leah, yeah, I felt like the relationships that you had with your cast members were also intimate, and comfortable. I mean, it's very brave. I feel courageous to take a role where you hurt the friend, the guy, and then you have a crush on the girl who looks like she's generally or stereotypically a lead. Does that make sense? Like when you watch like a rom com or a romantic film, it, you, it doesn't always feel good if the lead is hurting the jock. The jock is usually the guy who gets the cheerleader. The roles were just so different, but you played it comfortably. I hope I'm articulating this right for you, Alice.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
this is the people are really seeing themselves in this film that don't stereotypically tell the traditional roles in Hollywood type movies when it comes to love, young love, I should say.
Well, it's interesting because when you kind of set up the main character possibly hurting the jock situation, in this story, it's not even that really Ellie is hurting Paul. She literally is just existing and kind of coming into her own truth, which is what's really interesting about it. We see Ellie's emotions and we see her struggles and we carry that with us. And Paul just happens to be in these circumstances where it doesn't really work out for him. So I feel like that's when the love between everyone though really really does pay off in the end. And these characters, they're not like what I guess you would find in a normal rom com. I mean, you see the nerd and you see the jock and you see the beautiful girl, but all of them have such different layers that make them not just these two dimensional characters. They all have their own qualities and their own families and their hopes and dreams. And the one thing that they all have in common is being stuck in Squamish. So it's interesting seeing the beautiful girl have so much depth and the jock not necessarily be the star jock, but like the almost kind of trying jock who really kind of wants to succeed. And then Ellie, who is not this nerd, she is so much more than that. She's kind of like this home family scholastic warrior, I feel like.
Love that.
We've got a lot of questions coming in online, so I want to read some of them. One person writes, "Hi Alice, I noticed some parallels with Saving Face, and I wanted to ask if that was intentional. For example, Ellie and her dad's relationship is like Will and her mom's in the previous movie. And plus another one I noticed was Ellie working for Astor's dad while Will working for Vivian's dad in Saving Face. Are there intentional themes you
There,
use?
I don't think, well, I guess I wouldn't say, because I actually don't think Ellie and her dad's relationship is at all like Will and her mom's relationship in Saving Face, except that they're Chinese. Like, I think what is similar is that for me as a Chinese person, we don't say I love you to our parents, and our parents don't say I love you to us. But I think it's so funny. I think Will and her mom are like like her mom's just constantly nagging Will, and Will's mom is very like out there, and it's like this is what you should do. And I think Ellie and her dad is actually never like it's much quieter. It's like a very different kind of relationship. um, I think what maybe people are saying is, to me, those are different representations of familial relationships I've experienced being an Asian or Asian American. But I don't think that that's specific just to those two movies. I think if you were to see any Asian American, like I actually don't think that that's a parallel. And I guess I didn't really think of. I mean, I think the idea that works for Deacon Flores, I guess so, but not really. They never have any interaction. But I think when you're trying to write a movie, you do need characters to intersect, and you need worlds to intersect, right?
Right.
So it's just a function of narrative. Um, I will say that there are a couple of things that I put in the half of it as Easter eggs for Saving Face, but that the more than that, there's like Easter eggs all over the place from classic films that mattered to me growing up. But if you take any two films, you could start to be like, this and this are similar by nature of the fact that you have 90 to 100 minutes and this is the narrative. But no, that I wouldn't say either of those things were intentional.
You want to keep going with more questions?
Oh, sure. Someone else noted that Ellie says at the end, "See you in 2 years," and wanted to know if that means there's a sequel coming.
Oh, that was one of my questions. Thank you, whoever wrote that.
Alice, all you.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing. I don't think this movie needs a sequel. I think this movie, the beauty of it is it's not about who gets the girl. I think it's about a journey of self-discovery, and it's about these three people through their collision. Each of them learns something which allows them to become the person they need to be. Does that mean that there could be? I suppose there could, but the only reason I think there is to make a sequel is because it in and of itself would be a fantastic movie in and of itself, right? And I think there's a danger here where I get it. People want to know what happens, but I think it's similar. I actually think if Casablanca were released today, everyone would be like, wait, what? She got on the plane. We need a sequel. Do Rick and Ilsa ever see each other again? Like, I think there's that desire, and I get it. But I think it might cheapen the beauty, the actual sort of beauty of this film, which is that Ellie Chu's life is not going to get better. Like, her life isn't about being with Pastor Flores. Her life is like the world is her oyster now. Like anything can happen. And that last beat of the movie, like given that I think a lot about first shot, last shot for your main characters. And the first shot of Ellie is literally we see the back of her, right? We don't even see her full face until toward the end of that sort of montage of like of her getting ready in the morning. And the last beat of the film was literally just holding on her face, like full on, like just holding, watching her go through that journey. And then just in the end, just that beat of like a direct eye line and just a beat of confidence. And for me, that is everything because it basically like we don't know for sure what's going to happen to Ellie. Ellie doesn't know for sure what's going to happen to Ellie, but we know she's going to be okay. And more importantly, she knows she's going to be okay. And for like someone to then be like, and by the way, this is exactly what happens, I think cheapens the beauty of what life is, which is literally whatever has happened to you today, tomorrow, like that day is like yours, right? And it's about Ellie finally taking a step forward to be like, you know what, I do want more for myself. And we don't know what that's going to be, but that also means everything is possible.
but but I mean, I do feel like there was a strong chemistry between
Yeah.
Aster
Oh
and
no, that's
Ellie, and I
intentional.
think many of us, at the end are like, gosh, yes, they meet up again in 2 years and they
Yep.
date.
Fan
I
fiction
mean,
is your friend.
like
No, but that's my point. I love that you think that. But listen, here's the thing I'll tell you. Do you know how many people have said to me, do you think Ellie and Paul could be together? So what I am telling you is that
After
I
this?
get that that is what you want. Yeah. Oh my God. Are you kidding me? I also get a lot
Hello?
of straight people. Yeah. They're not. No, but telling me like, yeah, I don't. But I'm saying what I'm saying is like, well, maybe that because what they love is that I am saying that what's wonderful about that is that there's different kinds of relationships and friendships, right?
Mm.
And I'm saying, like, sure, you can do that, but then think it sort of cheapens the whole point of like all these people connecting. I mean, I personally might have my idea of what might make me happy, but you'll have yours and
Mhm.
someone else will have theirs. But I don't think this movie is about answering that. This movie is about answering what happens when you take a risk and finally decide to show more of yourself.
I love it. I love it. Leah, do you want to add something to that? Just because you bonded so much with Ellie, and lots of people will ask you, like, will Ellie and Aster end up together?
People actually ask me this question a lot, and it wasn't until 2 days ago that I really, really heard Alice's response, which is what you're saying right now. And I've actually kind of imagined something different. Initially, I imagined, after college, when they go off to college. Okay, restart. When Ellie goes off to college, I imagine she would stay in touch with Paul, and they would continue their relationship as best friends. And I imagine Ellie would navigate through some things with Aster, now having known these things about herself. But Alice, you're right. Ellie's life isn't just about Aster. I imagine Ellie will go on to do so many other things. Um, I was actually like, wow, you were kind of giving your answer, Alice, about what would happen in the future, what you don't want to happen in the future. I kind of pictured Ellie rocking in a chair on her porch, having lived a completely different life, maybe telling her kids with her wife about this one girl, Aster, that completely changed everything for her in high school. And that was the first time I ever really thought like maybe the narrative could go that way. Not saying that's where the sequel's going. I don't know anything about a sequel, but like my mind is definitely
Yep.
imagining
Yep.
so many different scenarios.
Yeah.
But it really is up to everyone else to see where that goes.
So that shows you
Like,
how much we're super into the movie, and it is a reflection of our experiences in a lot of ways. John, do you want to add more
Well,
questions from the audience?
yeah, someone, and I'll ask this in slightly different ways to each of you, but someone in the audience wrote in saying, this is a great film. It really is important for LGBT youth to see that representation on the screen. So maybe Leah, what does it mean to have that impact on young people, and does that, that's a responsibility, and I assume a bit of a gift. And then of course Alice, you set this up. You wanted to reach people, and how does that? Uh, uh, what does that mean to you to be really having created this for young people who, yes, I think they're seeing more representation these days, but in some ways they're also. It's kind of like there isn't a place to hide anymore because there's so much attention on this. So maybe Leah first. What's it like to be representing this for people?
It's an absolute privilege to be representing this LGBTQ community that it's just even hearing the way that people have responded to this, saying like I relate to this and this is my story exactly. It just kind of makes this whole experience and this whole project that much more gratifying to have been a part of, because stories like this do need to be told. And it's important that people out there know that stories like this are being thought of, being told, and being lived every single day, and that people are not alone. It's very, very important.
yeah.
Alice?
Yeah, no, similar to what Leah said. I mean, here's the thing. I'm a gay Asian nerd, right? And I basically just made a movie about like a gay Asian nerd. And I actually do sometimes I joke, but I kind of am not like I think when you make a film or you're writing a film, I think, look, writers, we're all these sort of repressed nerdy people. And so it's probably not
No.
like there's always a wish fulfillment of some sort, right? Like whether even if it goes tragic, there's maybe it. But in this case, I think there's probably a level of like wish fulfillment that when I was younger, I could have known that I was going to be okay someday because it turned out I am okay. Like, actually, I do love my life. But when you're younger, you don't know that, right? And I don't even think this is just about being gay. I actually think this is being in high school. I think, yes, Ellie's queer, but I don't think Ellie's sitting, there's no Queer Students Alliance in Squamish where she's sitting there writing about, like, oh, do I belong to this? I think literally Ellie is not thinking that she's even allowed love or a bigger future beyond just trying to keep things together for her
Yeah.
family. And to see, I think in high school for a lot of us, certainly for me, it was so, I mean, I sort of realized this as people were like, high school was profoundly lonely for me. But I think it takes you to becoming an adult before you realize that it's actually profoundly lonely for pretty much everyone. And so knowing that, like, yeah, I'm telling it through the lens of a queer Asian immigrant kid. But I think the reason it resonates for so many people is everybody has some reason why they were so lonely, right? Even if they're like super popular, they're so lonely. And I guess this is sort of a way of showing that you could be like, it doesn't need to be a big happy ending with a bow tied at the end. That the real happiness is realizing that you it could be okay. Like your future life could be okay. It sounds so trite when I say it like that, but I'm
It's
realizing that's
not.
kind of, where it probably came from.
You sound just like Ellie when you say that.
Oh, really?
Oh, there's a
Oh.
lot there that what you just said, Alice. I mean, there were a few things, and it wasn't just about like, oh, being an LGBTQ person in high school, growing up and closeted at the time for me, but it was also the other things like, Ellie being proudly downing the probiotic yogurt drink, and these cultural nuances that sometimes I think like we don't realize it's like internalized as Asian American people, and especially if you're first generation, second generation. For
By the way,
example,
I love
yeah,
that you're saying this quickly. I want to jump in to
yeah,
say someone literally sent me a thing that I love that they're like, I just felt so at home in this film and I couldn't figure out. And I've been watching it over and over. And then I realized in the dumpling scene that there's like Zhejiang sesame oil brand in the background. And I'm like, because I was specific about that. It's like, and I saw it and it made me feel so at home. And I was like super laughing how everyone does pay attention to these crazy details. But
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, 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 no. I mean, I was just gonna add my personal. I used to be so ashamed to, pop the white rabbit candy with the paper wrappings
Love those
around them
candies.
when I was a kid. But in
Oh.
2020, you put a film out, especially during this pandemic and COVID-19 and all this anti-Asian racism and things that people eat that people have an opinion about, and then of course throw in LGBTQ and Pride celebrations are canceled around the world. I mean, it what it did was, yes, bring me back to home. I can't visit my family anymore, but also it's so refreshing and so positive. I mean, yes, we need positive movies that tell us we can just be ourselves, especially when you're fighting a pandemic and also racism. I would love
Oh,
to
thank you
hear
for saying that.
if you've had share with us more of those stories of people writing in who talk about, thank you for putting something out there that Asian Americans can be proud of.
Yeah, my DMs are flooded, and I feel terrible because in the beginning, I'm not a social media person, so I'm still bad at like, but they're like flooded with these like really personal stories. And I would in the beginning, I was trying to respond to everyone, and then at a certain point, it became not possible. But I read everything, right? And like one that really hit me, like, well, let's see, one that I just got was someone basically wrote, "Hi, I just want you to know that like my daughter has just come out to me, 16, and she's been cutting herself actually because of how she's felt so not like she's like barely out to the parent, so and but is definitely not out to the rest of the school. But she was like she found this movie and is so excited to watch it with me, and it feels like it's given her like she feels hope." And I was just like, oh my god, like that was one I had to respond to because I was just like
So
the
sweet.
you know, yeah, it was just, but I just get so many just incredible like stories of people from all over the world, like the just being like, I'm so sorry, my English isn't very good, but this is what's happening for me. And I didn't know that that would happen because, again, when you're writing something, you write it super personally, and then you're like, maybe people will just be a blip in the world and it goes away. But it was surprising. I mean, it's been incredibly gratifying, but also, I guess it just sort of shows how much I think once a film's out there, it just becomes you know, bigger than us. It's just sort of it becomes all those people who and what they bring to it.
Leah, I feel like you probably get responses too, especially people just telling you it's so great. to have a positive Asian American, story lead first generation. You mentioned it earlier. I mean, you have a great story of being adopted, from Shanghai, China, by Caucasian parents, and I think you could say some really great things for, especially a lot of us who are grappling with this new environment we're in.
Hmm. Well, just what Alice said right now had me tearing up.
Mhm.
And I too actually do read everything as well. And I was also trying to like construct personal responses as well until it just got to be where I'm like, oh, I can't do this. This is this is a lot. But I do want everyone to know out there that we do see these things, and I hope everyone knows how much this means to Alice, I assume, and to myself as well. Even though I was not from an immigrant family, growing up as a Chinese American in kind of a smaller town in Orlando, Florida, was always such a different experience. And it was something that I never could really pinpoint until after I actually left where I grew up. And it's interesting kind of seeing the different environments that allow people to really be themselves and not really be shamed for certain things or painted a certain way due to stereotypical beliefs. And it wasn't until I moved to Los Angeles and was able to kind of more of an Asian community that I realized a lot of things I didn't even realize in high school, like being maybe assumed that I was supposed to be smart at this, or very modest in this area, or not looking like my family was a really big one for me. And even now, I'm kind of realizing how interesting that is. That I never really looked like my family, and my mom is from New York, and my dad is from Florida, and they actually, I'm very grateful to them because they really tried to keep what little they could and what they knew about the Chinese culture alive in my life. But even now, I am still discovering so many different things about getting in touch with my Chinese culture. And just hearing that everyone out there is relating to this story so closely, the sense of community and the sense of love and knowing that people see themselves on screen is incredible. Because, growing up as well, I never really had anyone that I could watch as like a main character that was Asian, that wasn't probably like twice my age at least, that I could really look up to and be like, wow, like, yes, there is an Ellie Chu there that looks like me going through these things at school and this and whatnot. And it wasn't even until a couple years ago that I watched To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which is a completely different story than our story. But the first time that I, as Leah, was able to really envision myself ever being able to have the opportunity to step into a role like this, where a story houses the space for the Asian American experience. And I didn't even realize that's the way I felt 2 years ago when I saw Lana Condor for the first time. It really kind of sparked a lot of dreams and goals for me as Leah. And I hope that this film is doing the same for people out there with whatever they're invested in at the moment. Sorry, I just kind of like rambled.
I
No, that
loved it.
was that
I
was
loved it.
beautiful. That's so great. John, let's go back to the
Thanks.
audience to see if we've got more questions.
Well, you both seem to be in good spirits, but if you ever have a down moment, just go to this video and read through the live chat questions and comments, because there's lots of stuff such as, I literally just finished watching this 10 minutes ago, great movie, thanking both of you for making the movie, how much they loved it. But here's a question, I guess for Alice. How much did Cyrano de Bergerac play in your conception of this film?
Oh, it's openly a take on Cyrano. Well, it starts as that, but it's like very deliberately, it's a take on Cyrano set in high school, but it's kind of like a Cyrano meets Pygmalion. And the reality is, I'm somewhat subversively, like I'm leading you in thinking this is a Cyrano story, but midway through, I sort of do a subtle switcheroo on you where it suddenly goes a direction you wouldn't necessarily expect because Cyrano, the whole thing is he or who's going to get the girl, right? But in this film, partway through, I think what happens is it's like, oh no, you start to fall in love with all of them, right? Like you don't want any of them to get hurt. It's not like, and a lot of times in a Cyrano story, you want Cyrano to win and the other person that, is somewhat callow or shallow in some way. But in this case, I think what happens is, of course, you love Ellie Chu. She's in like, she's really like it's her story. But you start to like, you first meet Paul, and I think, you're like, who's this guy? And then you start to fall in love with him. So at a certain point, like, you're like, oh no, I can't even tell you how many of my lesbian friends and dyke friends have been like, I don't know what happened, but I think I'm gay for Paul. Or they're like, they identify with Paul, or they're like, this is a straight guy. I can like, and it's sort of, and I think that's so intentional, so that you start to realize like, oh, I'm kind of playing with those tropes. And then the hope is you're in then at that point for the characters, and sort of what their ultimate I get this at this point, people watching this probably already know what the end is, and we already talked about it. But the hope is that, and I had multiple people read the script and be like, I got to this part where I started like, oh no, how is this gonna end? Like, and I think the ending that we have is actually the happiest ending that you could have, for all three characters.
Leah, a question for you. Someone asks, did you speak Mandarin growing up, or was it something you learned later? Your pronunciation was on the spot.
Guys, that means so much to me because I did not grow up speaking Mandarin. My mother had actually enrolled me in classes for Mandarin when I was younger, but unfortunately, my attention span was probably as big as a piece of sand, and I was not able to retain that. But I did have to learn the lines for Ellie in this film, and we practiced for 2 months. And I remember honestly doing this every single day. Like everyone around me, I'm like, how does this sound? Not like they could really understand what I was saying anyway, because they didn't speak Mandarin. But Alice guided me through every single step of this. It was so, thank you for being so patient with me. But that was something that I really really wanted to be as accurate as possible because this is somebody's language. It's unfortunately not my native language, but I really really took the time and consideration into that to try and make it as best as possible. So that's really cool to hear because I was stressing about it.
Yeah, no, I want to say that like Mandarin is an extremely hard language to speak if you don't have a lot of like if you don't grow up hearing it. And Leah has an incredible work ethic. I think she should, like, I don't know if people know how hard it is for her to do what she did, but also, I've
Stop.
said this on something else, but I do actually want to go on record and say I believe like Leah Lewis is going to win an Oscar in our lifetimes. Like I firmly believe that, and I will go on record saying that. Like she's just a phenomenal talent. And I think for her to go from, she, as she pointed out, like, yes, instinctually, Leah is nothing like Ellie Chu as Leah is now, right? Like, I think Leah's like, she's confident, she's funny, she could sing when she was younger. She had like she's very extroverted. And Ellie is very, like she hates it, like is very introverted and hates attention and is like, and I think for Leah to like strip away, like, I was basically asking her to strip away all those things that she has built up over the years that are wonderful and work for her, right? It's like earned confidence. And I'm asking her to like slowly peel those things down to get to the core of what would, what, like, to basically find the Ellie inside her. And that's so hard to do. And I think even just the Mandarin is just a small window into what that process is like, right? And I like working with Leah was honestly one of the best working experiences my entire life. I really was grateful for it.
That's
Me
so
too.
awesome. I did want to note that. I mean, what actors, actresses, and artists are able to do, and just find themselves or not themselves and play people that are not them. I mean, it's just so brilliant. And so going back to this brilliancy, Alice, this is your second film. Someone from the audience had mentioned your first film, Saving Face. And so, how do you feel about this second film that's got positive reviews and people are loving it?
Yeah, I'm still processing it, to be totally honest, because I've been girding my loins ever since the film. Like we've been like, as soon as they announced it in January, and all of a sudden, I didn't. First of all, I did not realize. I knew I had like a small, very like very devoted fan base, but I thought it was very small. I literally thought it was like maybe all my friends and like all the people they dated, and maybe all the people they dated, and that's about it, right? But like it was a lot more people than I expected, at least, or they're just a lot more vocal on social media. And then I became incredibly terrified because they were like we love Saving Face. This is going to be great. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not like Saving Face 2. This is a different kind of movie. It's a much more melancholy movie. I'm like I'm asking a different question that I'm trying to answer. And so I'm like, I don't see how this cannot just lead to a flood of disappointment. Like people literally were writing things like, I trust Alice with my life. And I was like, please do not do that. That's like a terrible idea. Like, please lower your expectations and just watch it. And I'm really amazed. Like I have zero doubt that in that body people, I'm sure for a lot of people, Saving Face will be their favorite. And they'll be like, I like this too, but it's not as good as Saving Face. And that's cool. It's like you have two children. Not everyone is going to love, both children. But for me, I love both children equally. And I think they both have different attributes and they both share some similar DNA. And I've been incredibly lucky that, for the most part, people have been so generous and willing to support, definitely beyond what I would have imagined. So, I mean, I keep waiting for like the next week when they're all like, I saw it again and no, like I keep waiting for something bad to happen. So, yeah.
No.
Well, let me ask the most obvious question, but I'm going to ask it of each of you. What are you working on now, or what is next? So, Leo, what's on your plate next?
What's on my plate next? I plan on making pasta for lunch. And
Sounds good.
at the moment, I'm just trying to stay as present as possible and healthy emotionally and physically. I'm just kind of staying in the present at the moment, nothing in the future. Although I do have a season 2 of Nancy Drew coming out in the very, very way future, but that's not something we need to worry about now. When everything picks back up, I think we'll be doing that. But as of now, just hanging out and living life.
Very good. Alice, how about you? What are you working on or
Oh,
planning?
well, so I always am writing something for myself, but I usually don't write those things knowing if they're going to become something that I'll want. Like I may write and maybe none of it will turn into anything that I think is worth trying to make, right? If it does, then I'm going to be out there trying to make it. And if it doesn't, I mean, yes, my agents are sending me a bunch of stuff and I'm reading things, but the truth is, I've never been someone who feels like I have to make a film just to make a film, or I have to, like for me, it's got to be, I love this project, in which case I'll kill for it. Otherwise, I truly am like, I'm looking forward to seeing my friends. I'm not just on Zoom calls, like eating food. I can't wait to hug people.
Mm.
Honestly, like I want to like see my family and I want to hug them. I think that's probably first and foremost.
I wanted to ask this from filmmakers and actors and actresses. I mean, how do you think this will change? It's a hard question, though. I don't even. You can say pass if you don't want to answer it. But how do you think it'll change? What you do as a profession, and going on set and shooting scenes with people, and I don't even know. I don't even know what we're gonna do here at the Commonwealth Club. Except I know that thank goodness we have a virtual opportunity. We're so used to doing a live audience thing. Or you can even answer it from the perspective of, this debuted on Netflix and it's super successful. And, we finally say, thank goodness we have platforms like Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
You,
you want that
you
one?
want to,
Oh, oh yeah.
any one of you.
How do you feel?
Yeah. Leah,
I
you go first.
actually I didn't quite understand the question,
I
being
was just
completely
wondering,
honest.
like,
So
how do
sorry.
you think this whole COVID-19 thing will impact your
Mm.
profession as an actor, actress, and you can even say like you don't know yet, right? Because many of us are saying
Yeah.
that about our own profession. You could even answer it from, what, thank goodness we have Netflix because people are at home and continuing to watch our art and it's accessible. But I was just wondering from your profession if you had started to think about how this all will impact you in the future.
Ah, yes. I actually really have no clue how this is going to affect our industry. I mean, what you brought up about Netflix and all these platforms is a very, very valid point, and I'm very grateful that, through amidst everything, people are still turning to the characters that they love on TV and turning to entertainment and art and whatnot. Um, I really don't know. I'm really not sure.
Alice,
Yeah,
same.
same.
Yeah.
I think, I think I know people who are working on like, a task force in New York and this and that. But the reality is, I don't know that any of us knows what's going to happen. I suspect that just because I have a number of friends in like post production or editing, and everyone is now doing it in their own homes, I'm very curious if that means there's going to be more do it yourself work. That, like, let's
Mm.
say the next 2 years, we're basically stuck in this until a vaccine comes out, right? I mean, I'm curious if that means there's going to be some like, do it yourself stuff that gets out there and people are going to be watching different formats, which I mean, that's sort of my most optimistic version of like because I'm curious to hear new voices, right? But in terms of, you know, Hollywood as we know it, I don't know. I feel like even before COVID-19, we're starting to go through different kind of a sea change. Just obviously Netflix is a huge disruptor over the last few years, and I think the pandemic really, um, I think it sort of accelerated for a lot of more traditional studios the sense of, wow, we really need to figure out what our streaming, like how we can release things streaming. And I think they're probably all sitting back and watching right now to be like, well, if we did release this thing streaming that was intended for theatrical, um, does it do well? Like they're probably thinking about the economics of that, which I confess I'm a little sad about as an old school filmmaker, where I do love the theatrical experience. And actually, Netflix was going to give us a theatrical on this before this all happened. But I also chose Netflix instead of like a couple of theatrical options I had, because I knew that it would just the accent, like the its reach. It reaches people who were never going to go to the theater to see this movie, and teens aren't even going to the theater to watch Marvel movies these days,
Mhm.
So I knew if I'm reaching those people, Netflix, best game in town. But even for other, like even for action films, like maybe it is fine. I don't know. Like, so that's going to be fascinating to see if when we come out of this, the bar for theatricals set higher in a different way.
Mm.
And I really only ask these types of questions because I don't know either, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness, everybody else doesn't know, so I'm good. I'm
We're
at the
all trying
same
to figure
level
it out.
as all yeah, everybody
We
else.
all got together to discuss it. We all know. We just did not invite you.
Oh, we're winding down. I want to make sure we get some of these last questions.
Let's get one more question in from the audience. And someone asked for Alice, how did you transition from being a software engineer to film director and creative artist? You're an inspiration excuse me, you're an inspiration for me to really chase the same dream.
Oh wow. I would love to answer that question, but I also know I feel like we only have a couple more minutes, and I don't want to be like taking that whole time up talking about something that also you can Google and probably read about because I've actually answered that question before. But I will say, well, I love that. I feel like whoever asked it, what I'm hearing is whoever asked it secretly has a dream that they are want to pursue, and that they also probably have a comfortable situation that they would have to let go of in order to pursue that dream. And I would say that I super understand that, and not to judge yourself for not having like done something brave, because I get that all the time where people are like, why were you so brave? I'm not. And I'm like, I don't think I am. I actually think I spent many years as a software engineer not doing anything that would be considered brave, right? And I think that where you are on your path is where you're supposed to be, and the fact that you want something more is exciting because it means that's there. And just to be gentle with yourself about how that emerges, because like I just turned 50 last week, right? I just made a movie with teenagers in it. Nobody knows anything, right? Like I made one other movie that came out 15 years ago, right? So let me be an inspiration that like apparently the clock is not ticking as fast as you think because like there's time. Like, and so I feel like just know that um, I think the important thing is that you want to reach for something, and just know that whatever that is, um know that your time will come for that. Like, just keep. I don't know. It sounds vague when I say it like that, but I mean that. Like, keep giving space for that thing, and as that thing starts to crystallize and you start to realize what you love about it, I bet the rest of it will become more clear.
We had about 5 minutes left, and then I'll just ask the last question. It's to both of you, and it really is about yeah, a future, you know, kind of a question. So Leah, if you played a character that I saw myself in, and so if there was a story where you could see yourself and someone were to play it, who would it be?
Who would it be?
I know that's a hard question. Or what would the story be? Right? Yeah. Or maybe it's a role that you could potentially see yourself in the future. Just having some fun.
So I actually know this actress. Her name is Alice Lee. And her and I actually did a couple testings together for certain projects. And I always found her acting style and just her personality very quirky and how unaware she is of herself, but yet she is just a really cool person and makes really confident choices. I would love to see her in a quippier life story version. Okay, I'm not making any sense. I would just love to see her play me. She's a really great actress. Alice Lee, look out for her, folks. Like she's really great.
Awesome. You know, Alice, I mean, you said it earlier, right? Like in both your films, there are parts of the storylines that are personal to you. You always write, you know, with a personal voice. So considering that you just turned 50, happy birthday, or at least this year sometime. Ish, yeah. Maybe like, you know, a future story that you might be writing, and we could see a little bit of you again. If it's not Leah who plays the next
Who would I cast?
somebody, who would it be?
Justin Timberlake for sure. I freaking love Justin Timberlake. Like if my life could from here, like if you're basically asking me like how I will live the rest of my life, and then I would love like from 50 to like 70. Well, actually he's too young to do that. But my point, well, maybe by the time I get around to writing it, he won't be. But like I would love the rest of my life to mimic like, you know, Justin Timberlake's talents. I mean, you know, like come on, he can sing, he can dance, he's funny.
He's got 3 great albums. Very, very
Right?
good.
No. You're right. I mean, yes.
Not the answer you were
I
expecting.
genuinely
No,
love
it wasn't
Justin
the answer
Timberlake.
I was expecting, but I'll take it because I'm a Justin Timberlake fan, and yes, NSYNC and all that. I mean, hello, 90s kid. This has been super fun and super great, and again, thank you so much for the half of it. It truly lifted a moment for me during a very difficult time, right? And especially when you're sitting there and trying to find a movie on Netflix anyway, that takes up like hours, but the half of it, yeah, when it popped up, it was just like, this is great. And you know, you're hearing the responses, so people love it. So thank you for sharing the half of it with us and being on the Michelle Meow Show.
Thank you so much for having
Michelle,
us.
thank you for having us. This has been such a good experience. This is so cool.
John, I'll toss it to you to end the program.
I'll just add more thanks. Thanks to our 2 speakers today. Thanks to Michelle. Thanks to all of you who have been watching us and asking great questions online. We will be, of course, posting this elsewhere online on video and in podcast form. So please like, share, follow us. And of course, find out about more programs that we have coming up. We've got them on all kinds of topics, including 2 this Thursday that Michelle and I are doing right here again. So just go to commonwealthclub.org/online. Thanks again and have a great week.